chains, applaud, applaud. Parasite pawns on the floor, piece of flesh may be Lord. Promises fake, truth denied, in their pockets freedom died.
Good morning, everyone, or whatever time it is, wherever you're at on this worldwide tax plantation we call Earth. Yeah, a couple minutes behind this morning. I apologize. I was actually trying to pull up some court cases I'm going to share with you guys, and also cite some examples of how you always have to verify and validate anything. Well, here, let me take that stupid banner off. My bad. Verify and validate anything that you read. So WordPresses and blog spots and things like that are always a good source of a good way to find leads for various case laws or congressional record or anything like that. But you always have to go source and verify. Well, except for with what I show you, because I show you directly from the source, but I'll give you the links or show you where to find it. And of course, just go always, trust, but verify. But I generally, that's why I show you guys stuff directly from the source, wherever it comes from. So anyway, that was a new song. It's Parasite Pawns. And I see you guys talking about the AI and stuff and how it's tough to be an artist. And yeah, that's true. But I still think that a lot of people are loyal to man or woman made arts, crafts, songs, stuff like that, because I feel like everybody has a feeling, just like an internal need to resist this robotic, artificial nightmare. Or, maybe it won't be a nightmare. Who knows? Maybe it could be pretty useful. I find some of the things it does useful. But yes, it is. We do need to put in some protections against arts and artists and various other things, lawyers, well, fuck the lawyers, but jurists. So, and that actually brings me to my my next statement. I did start the membership on the YouTube side. It's the Jurist Society. We'll begin classes this weekend. It's $9.99 a month, which is less than $250 a class. I plan on holding at least 4 classes a month. I left a link in the description. One of the reasons I was late this morning. 4 classes a month, access to my whole entire hard drive, and also basically my assistance but my personal assistance with whatever you need. However, what you're going to be learning is how to, well, first of all, claim your estate. That's the most important thing, and how to put teeth on that claim, basically, so that anyone who attempts to administer it, you've got the nastiest performance contract that anybody's ever seen, and anybody who knows contract law will not even want to mess with it, right? So hold on, Jerry. I'm going to get to saying hi to you guys in a second. But also on top of that, you're going to learn how to file counterclaims at law, declarations, trespass on the case. Depends on the situation. We'll go through common law actions and defenses. Of course, you'll get reading material, things that, of course, you're going to have to study in your private time as well, because you're never going to learn. I've been studying for years, so it takes a long time to learn this stuff. But we're going to go through the ins and outs of everything you need to know to be able to slap these pirates right in the face. And we're going to go through a little bit of that this morning. So I'm still going to have these regular morning classes, and then we're going to have the Jurist Society members only classes on the weekends. And that's why I'm going to incorporate more law into the morning classes for people who maybe they want to go their own way. They don't really want to sign up. I don't care. I'm just happy to have you guys here. Like I said, the membership fee merely weeds out the trolls and people who are not serious. I actually had somebody on the Rumble side. They told me, they said, man, this information's top notch. How come everybody doesn't know about this? How come, because like the people who get it, and they're like, wow, this is powerful, right? This is exactly what they're doing. Well, that's exactly the thing is like my channel attracts law dogs, legal beagles, right? People who already have some familiarity with the law. So when I explain about the administration of the estate using the Magna Carta and the probate jurisdiction, and I give examples and I go through and show you the historical statutes and laws and all of that, it makes sense. But for people who are brand new to law coming across this channel, they're not going to understand even the beginning of what we're talking about. So that's another reason for the membership, is because you don't, it's basically handing the stuff out that I have to give to the members is like handing a loaded gun to somebody who's never used a gun before. You know, either they're going to get them, it just would be not good. So if you want to become a member and participate in those classes, the link's in the description on the YouTube side. Aside from that, let me say hi to everyone who's in the chat this morning. We have, you go all the way to the top, you guys are chatting it up. So I don't know if 7 String happened to make it back, but 7 String did mention about the missing children that had recently been found. That is fantastic, actually. Somewhere of like upwards of 80 to 100,000 that Secretary Mayorkas said that he had no idea where they went. They're basically just bringing kids right across the border and handing them to whoever. They took away the DNA testing because at least before they would be like when somebody came across the border with an immigrant child, they'd be like, okay, well, let's run a DNA test, make sure you're at least related to this kid. Or before they handed them off to somebody, they would make sure they vetted them and knew that, this was an arrangement. Well, they got rid of all that and somehow lost upwards of 100,000 kids. Well, immediately within the first week of Trump being president, somehow they found them. So I would say it was not so much that they lost them, it's so much they misplaced them intentionally, probably for profit, if I was to guess. So that's good news. That's good news that those kids were found. Not particularly sure what's going to happen to them, being as they are illegal immigrants. So, but we'll see how that all works out. Anyway, so let's say hi to who's in the chat. We got Dylan. Good to see you, man. Walking Axel. Good to see you. Dead and Drumming. Yep, here on time. Unfortunately, I wasn't this morning. I apologize for that. Jerry, son of Nick, he says he has a question for me. I did see that. I'll address that when I get down to it. Unindoctrinated. Sub nerds. Let's see here. We get Ida Hat. Good to see you. Good to see you. Big Pine Sailing. Eldon Bean. Good to see you guys. One more quarter. And Wind Bay Bear, who actually just signed up for the Jurist Society. So we will begin those classes this weekend, man. I'm pretty excited because as more and more of my subscribers become members, it will actually make for some interesting discussions on law because you're going to have a more in-depth understanding of what it is I'm talking about. If I'm sure you have a pretty good grasp on it already, but you'll be able to actually participate and perhaps through your own research contribute things I have not come across yet. So that's why it's called the Jurist Society, because we are a society of jurists. Jurists are students of the law. So RF is killing us softly. Catch 22. Good to see you, brother. Chicago Cubby Bear. And I think I got through everybody this morning. All right. So before we get into the law stuff, that's another thing. So I never want to give you guys anything. If you guys ever purchase anything from the channel, I never want to give you something you cannot use. And so I was looking into, and I had an idea, and I was going to float it to you guys and see what you thought. They have the clothing merchandise and stuff like that, right? Well, I don't want to just design stupid, burn the corporate fiction bullshit. I'm not that type of guy. I'm not trying to get you to wear the logo or none of that shit. What I want to do is I was thinking I'm going to put case law, some of the case law we're going to go through this morning. So say like there's been times where I've been driving and I didn't have like my binder with me or anything, or I couldn't think of this specific case off the top of my head. And I'm like, man, if I got pulled over, I wish I could remember this. So why not put it on a hat or put it on a t-shirt with like a cool design, like Marbury versus Madison or Chisholm versus Georgia, which we're going to actually go through this morning. That's one of the most powerful superior court cases. We're going to go through jurisdiction this morning a little bit, depending on how much time we have, superior courts of record, but definitely going to get to these court cases. But before we do that, I want to go through some news. So this is pretty crazy. What's going on, Ida Hack? Good to see you. Thought I gave you a shout out, but if not, there's another one. We're going to go through some news. So one of the very first things, did you guys hear? And I honestly can't believe this, because the last president who even thought of doing something like this, the last thing that went through his mind was a bullet. And he's and restored sovereignty to the states and the people. But I guess one thing at a time. The real thing that we need is to get rid of the LEI, the legal entity identification, legal entity identifier that's attached to an account number, like say your social security number, your driver's license number, and all that shit, because that's what they use to keep records. That's actually what makes crypto and data mining valuable, is because they're collecting data on this entity that they've created, your digital twin, which is your legal entity identity, your LEI. And that's really the ball of the chain, the ball attached to the chain of the entire debt enslavement system is your legal entity identification. So if you could get rid of that, that'd be real nice. But one thing at a time. I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. So let's check this out real quick.
America is going to be very rich again, and it's going to happen very quickly. It's time for the United States to return to the system that made us richer and more powerful than ever before. Do you know the United States in 1870 to 1913, all tariffs, and that was the richest period in the history of the United States, relatively speaking. In other words, relatively. And
so 1870, well, that's because, and when he says the United States, he means quite literally the United States Corporation that is the District of Columbia doing business as the United States. And of course, that was the richest period, even though the rest of the Republic was war torn, right? From the Civil War, obviously, that had just happened. The United States became very wealthy because it usurped all the manufacturing wealth of the North, now having taken over state sovereignty, and usurped all the, and of course, through the 14th Amendment, beginning to usurp their citizenship and having reformed it into a corporate union. But in the agricultural wealth of the South. So of course the United States was very wealthy, but let's continue. I'm not knocking him. It took many generations to get into this mess. And so this is a step, if he's serious. And I'm going to show you guys, there's actually a House bill already. So
they set up the Great Tariff Commission of 1887. And this commission had one function: what to do with all the money that we took in. It was so enormous that they had no idea. It was a blue ribbon committee. It was set up 1887, and what to do with all of the money that we had. And again, Teddy Roosevelt was a beneficiary, because when McKinley was killed, he took over this vast sum of money, and he did all of those national parks and all of the other things. And I'm not knocking him, but he was given a vast amount of money. And that was all made through tariffs. We had no income tax. The income tax came in 1913.
Yeah, so did the Federal Reserve. And the income tax came in 1909 with the Corporate Tax Act, but then was gradually expanded to the federal citizens, which were actually just estates and franchises of the federal corporation. And that's the whole thing, is because they can only charge income tax on a corporation or an estate, a trust, basically, which a trust is. So you can't have a trust without an estate. That's why I tell you guys all the time, everyone has an estate. The birth certificate is the title, both the title and the abandonment document. That's how your parents abandon you, of the estate, but it represents title of the estate. Right. So basically your parents sign you over to the state pledges you to the United States Corporation. The United States Corporation mortgages you to the international institutional investors, and they generate a series of Federal Reserve notes. But yeah, Yeah, essentially, that's right. 1913 is when everybody knows that's when things really started to get messed. It really happened in the Civil War. That's when, because we went from being a Confederate Union to a corporate union, which I've proven many times on this channel. So if you're new, just go watch any of the last few streams that I've done, and I go through, explain, and prove that even Michigan, one of the northernmost states, is a Confederate state under the original republic. But 1913 is essentially when everything started to get fucked up, real fucked up.
As I said in my speech last week, instead of taxing our citizens to enrich foreign nations, we should be tariffing and taxing foreign nations to enrich our citizens. Does that make sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no shit. And see, the tariffs are the proper tax system, which is how the government's supposed to be funded in the first place, right? Because all the government's job is to do is deal with international trade, including between the states, right? The federal government, and the state deals with trade within the state. They only have an economic function, right? They're not supposed to have a necessarily an enforcement function, except as a utility for the people to use, like, say, a court. And so that's what a justice of the peace is supposed to be a magistrate that's basically a referee. You're the sovereign of the court, because the substantive definition, as we'll go through this morning, is a sovereign and a sweep. But see, I digress. Let's get back to this. So he's actually serious about this. And the reason I say that is because anybody can say whatever, but he actually has, this is a bill that just got introduced by the House just recently. So it's HR House Resolution 25 of the 119th Congress. And it's to promote freedom, fairness, and economic opportunity by repealing the income tax and other taxes, abolishing the Internal Revenue Service, and enacting a national sales tax to be administered primarily by the state. See, the issue is it's still being done through a corporate union, and you're still a 14th Amendment citizen, right? And you're still a legal entity attached to an account number that they can generate securities off of. But this is definitely a step in the right direction. So, hey, I'll tell you what, I'll take the extra Federal Reserve notes right now instead of giving them over to a bunch of greedy pirates. Yeah, I'll take that. So, let's see here. Hey, what's up, Mojo? Good to see you, man. Let's see here. All right, so I was going to show you guys, this had been done obviously before, and people come onto this like it's a brand new fucking thing. It's not. And there is not supposed to be income tax. They cannot reach into your sweat equity, into your labor, your wages, and take it before you. That's your personal property. It's never subject to taxation because the people are sovereign, right? And we have absolute title, or we're supposed to have absolute title to our estates. The only way a creditor can come in, well, first of all, the United States can never be a creditor. See, they're extorting you on behalf of their third-party creditor, which would be the Federal Reserve, international banking cartel, and private institutional investors. And it should be nothing like that. But in our original republic, and we should have long stood up and rose up over this, they can never tax your private property, period. So the only things that can be taxed are the things that are necessary to facilitate trade, such as tariffs, certain excise taxes, which is a tax on an activity, and sales tax. And that's it. And that's more than enough money for the very small government we're supposed to have that is beneath us as servants, which I'm going to show you court cases that absolutely 100% without a doubt prove that. And if you guys want me to put these excerpts on t-shirts and hats and stuff from these cases later, let me know in the comments and I will set those up. And like I said, it'll be something you can use. You're wearing a hat. I was thinking something like motor vehicles, the United States Code, where it literally defines motor vehicle as a conveyance used for commercial purposes only. It doesn't say or used for commercial purposes, it says and used. So what is the traffic cop, the policy pirate's job is to prove that you're engaged in commerce, which is easy for them to do if you have a commercial plate on the back of your motor vehicle at that point. But still, even beyond that, he still needs to prove that you're in commerce if you know how to argue it right. So anyways, check this out. So I like how they act like this shit's brand new.
What if I told you there was an American president who was so popular that no one even bothered to run against him when he ran for re-election. That not only was he a war hero that served under Washington in the American Revolution, but he was shot in the arm at the Battle of Trenton and lived the rest of his life with a bullet lodged in his shoulder. That he led America as the Secretary of War in the War of 1812.
Yeah, by the way, that's what the Secretary of Defense used to be appropriately actually called when the government was honest about what that office is supposed to do. Is it's a Secretary of War, dude, not defense. Is it defense when we go use fucking drones to spread democracy all over Syria, right? Is that what that is? That's defense? No, it's not. Because they won't bow to our foreign policy, right?
That we wouldn't have a Bill of Rights without his influence.
We're defending ourselves against their non-compliance to our foreign policy. All right, I'm done.
That he negotiated the Louisiana Purchase as a diplomat in France, and that as president, he purchased Florida from Spain. And that while doing this, he not only eliminated all internal taxes in the United States of America, but he cut the...
But guess what? None of those internal taxes were an income tax because that is entirely unconstitutional and unlawful at common law, unless you agree to be taxed by contract, which you're always free. Well, actually, no, I've just came across some superior court cases that say that you cannot contract your freedom, your sovereignty away, but I digress.
U.S. debt in half in his 8 years in office, from 120 million to 60 million, without American citizens paying any income tax. He did it all with tariffs. Cut the debt in half with tariffs. And he laid down infrastructure that would lead to an economic boom by connecting the Potomac River.
Yeah, you guys get the idea. So the tariff thing is actually how the government can become prosperous very quickly. It's a good idea. Things will become more expensive initially, but that's the ripping off the Band-Aid, because the currency is so overinflated right now that prices are being artificially, as expensive as everything is, those prices are artificially being kept low, by the way, because the market's is being kept from reacting how it should and needs to react in order for everything to balance back out. But anyways, also, another added thing, that he is not the most popular president. Actually, believe it or not, one of the most popular presidents, aside from obviously Trump right now, was Andrew Jackson. And Andrew Jackson, because he killed the bank. That's what he ran on. That's what he was the first president to go around and actually campaign to the people. So prior to Andrew Jackson, no president had went around and campaigned personally, from state to state. And like I said, the people, and I've said this many times, people did not vote for the president. The people, because the federal government's like a grandchild, and the office of the presidency is like it's like the grandson of the people. Okay, literally, that's the descent of power, the devolution of authority right there, because we vest the state with a portion of our sovereign authority, which of course we retain. And the states got together and created a feudal trust called the federal government, which is what federal means, feudal trust, and took a portion of the sovereignty that we gave to them and gave that to the feudal government. Okay, so he's the grandchild, and the people never personally voted for the president. All right, the people voted for a county elector who would be the one who voted for the president. He's a servant. Okay, everybody going leaders in government. I hate that shit. And I also hate the word democracy. We're not a fucking democracy at all. And for this exact reason, okay, they're not leaders, they're servants, they're beneath us. Okay, they do not have sovereign authority over us at all. The only thing that has sovereign authority over one of the people is a jury. That's it. A jury of that individual's peers. And what peerage means is sovereign. So it doesn't mean equal. Peer only means equal if the other person is sovereign as well. Then they are your equal, but that's not what peerage means. That's why the royalty over in England traced their lineage through Burke's peerage, because that's what peerage is, right? So jury of your peers were sovereigns without subjects. I actually have that case for you guys this morning once we get through this. But Andrew Jackson, most popular, and the banks were trying to kill him. They even sent an assassin after him, and both the assassin's pistols misfired, And then he actually whooped the assassin's ass, because that's the type of dude he was. And the people came out during the election and while everything was being, and they kept him, they personally protected him. They came out and actually personally protected Andrew Jackson. Look it up. The people came out and protected him because they were people were a lot more intelligent back then than they are today. And they knew what a central bank was and the havoc it was wreaking on the economy, and the fact that it was the cause of the War of 1812, the central banking system was, right? So anyway, I digress. Let's see. What else did I want to get to before we get to the Supreme Court cases? Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember. So, letter of marque and reprisal, which is what a bar license is, actually. Mark, it's not marque, mark. Letter of marque and reprisal, which is, and that's the whole thing. Law wasn't just created when we started the United States. We inherited, so international law or admiralty had existed for many, many, many centuries prior to us bringing it here and applying it as international law, as international, the law of international trade. See, the federal government primarily operates in admiralty because its job is to deal with international trade and foreign relations. So that would be the jurisdiction that it's in, especially during the time that the country was founded. Everything was done by ship. So admiralty. Well, a letter of marque and reprisal is permission from a sovereign authority to a privateer to plunder the vessels of pirates or anything that the federal government or the sovereign authority deemed to be a threat. And they're actually talking about doing this again. And it's interesting because people think this is a new thing, but it's not. It's a very, very, very old thing. So let's see. Mike Lee. Let's see. Okay, so Donald Trump Jr. endorses Senator Mike Lee's plan to issue letters of marque and reprisal to private U.S. citizens that would allow them to hunt down cartel members in foreign countries, starting with Mexico. I mean, it is an incredibly cost-efficient way to deal with that issue. And this is actually constitutional. There's nothing wrong with doing this. The last time it was done was against Barbary pirates. And so, but interesting thing about this is they already do that to the Bar Association. The Bar Association, the bar license is essentially a grant of marque and reprisal to pillage and plunder the vessels of enemy sovereigns. That's what that is. And they delegate that authority to their policy officers who are actually pirates, and they go around and pillage and plunder the vessels of enemy sovereigns. Because remember, everyone within the territory of the United States is an enemy of the state, according to the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917, amended in 1933 by that syphilitic cripple Roosevelt, who is a piece of shit, and basically declared everyone enemies of the state and then took their gold. And now everything that you do is commerce and requires a license according to the Trading with. That's actually where the driver's license comes from, is the authority, the executive authority to allow the Secretary of State to force the U.S. infant pauper, the 14th Amendment U.S. infant pauper, to obtain a license to operate, remember commercial term, a motor vehicle, another commercial term, is because in order for anyone to engage in commerce, you have to have a license according to the Trading with the Enemy Act as amended in 1933. And I've shown that many times. And of course, it's been amended many times since then, but that's when that syphilitic cripple bastard just declared everybody within the territory of the United States an enemy of the state, requiring license to engage in commerce. So, and it's really, when you read it, it doesn't make any sense, because you're just like, yeah, so enemies are now everyone in the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. What are you talking about? Why is this even a thing? We weren't in a war at that time. And that was the whole reason for the Trading with the Enemy Act in 1917 in the first place, was because they planned on doing that. Anyways, so yeah, they're talking about actually, let's see. Yeah, I think this James Madison issued it. This is an example of letter of marque and reprisal. See, I keep wanting to say marque because it's French. It's got the UE at the end of it. And what they're talking about doing is issuing this for the private drug cartels, or the Mexican drug cartels. And then like people like Eric Prince, you guys know who that is? Eric Prince runs what used to be called Blackwater, the mercenary group that, the for hire paramilitary, generally they're top notch. They're like, you don't want to fuck with those guys pretty much. And they're like what you see in movies, basically. Like when you see a private paramilitary group in like an action movie or something, that's Eric Prince's. It's Eric Prince's organization. You don't want to mess with that. But it would allow somebody like him and his organization to obtain a letter of marque from the United States corporation, and then go down and essentially privateer and hunt down cartel members, and then whatever they get from the cartel members, they come back and they have to split it 50-50 with the United States. I mean, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool that they're going back old school and using old admiralty. And for me, the reason I say it's cool is because it's like a step towards going back to the laws that we should be under. Well, not us. We're not under admiralty unless you're on the sea or engaged in international trade. But, the laws of a better time, in my opinion, so, but yeah, so they go down to Mexico or to wherever, because it's also, they're talking about attacking them in all these other countries. It lets the United States keep their hands clean of any kind of issues with foreign countries. And then, say like it's Eric Prince and his organization, they go out and they, get the cartel members and say they've got like a big cache of money or gold or whatever. See, the curious thing is if it was like drugs or something, they're probably going to take that too. And are they going to split that with the United States corporation, or are they just going to split the money they get from, selling? There's a lot of questions with this, but it's still very interesting. I thought you guys would find it interesting as well. This is, I suppose I can just share the window now. This is actually the constitutional authority under Article 1, Section 8, empowering Congress to declare war, of course, which they don't do anymore. Pretty much the president just says, yeah, we're going to war. And then because we're actually in a state of martial law ever since the Civil War. That's where the executive order comes from in the first place, right? Blackwater means poo and sailboat hold. That's disgusting. Yeah, it's pretty funny, though. Maybe that's why he changed the name, because it's not called Blackwater anymore. I can't remember what it is called, but they did change the name of it. So probably because it was getting too much bad PR, people knew about it, and they were getting accused of carrying out false flags on, like various hoaxes. I'm not going to name any because we're on YouTube, and Blackwater was being accused of being the group that was hired by the government to carry out these various false flag attacks in order to obviously pass anti-gun legislation and all that dumb shit. Allegedly, of course, allegedly. So that's probably why they changed. But anyway, so they have the power to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and make rules concerning captures on land and water. It's funny because I watched Senator Lee actually talk about this, and he cited the wrong part of the Constitution. Fucking senators and people don't even, I don't know, like I'm not knocking them or whatever. I think they're all parasites for the most part. And I think the only reason any of them are even slightly getting in line right now is because the people are at their fucking boiling point. But and they know better because we have more arms, we'll call it, because that's constitutionally what they are in this country, than all the militaries in the world combined. And that's just the registered ones that they know about. But he cited this as Article 1, Section 10. No, Article 1, Section 10 is the one forbidding the states from granting letters of marque and reprisal, because the states are their own country. So they had to not only see if they would have only granted this to the United States, but not actually prohibited themselves from doing it. You never lose anything that you give. If you vest the government with the authority to do something the same way that we vest the states, or the states vested the federal government, you still retain the power to exercise that yourself unless you explicitly prohibit yourself from doing it, like they did in the Constitution here. So right here, they granted Congress the power to grant letters of marque and reprisal. And then down in Section 10, right here, says no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, because they gave Congress the power to do all these things. And if they didn't specifically prohibit themselves from doing it, they could still also do that. And so right here, it says right here, grant letters of marque and reprisal. No state shall do that. Only Congress, federal Congress can do that. Well, the reason I bring that up is because that applies to holding court, right? We granted the government, we vested a portion of our sovereign authority in the government to be able to hold court cases regarding primarily equity when it comes to having a judge, because there is no judge at common law, right? It's a magistrate or a justice of the peace is a magistrate, basically. A magistrate is a general term, and justice of the peace is a form of magistrate, and he's nothing but a paper pusher. He has no tribunal authority, and he does not decide the facts or the law of a case. The sovereigns do that. And you're the sovereign if you bring the case. And the only thing that's sovereign above you is a jury if the defendant requests one, which is his right as a sovereign. And that's why trial by jury is so important, is to protect you from crazy sovereigns. That's why historically trial by jury in other countries have always been so important, to protect you from crazy sovereigns, including the king. That's why it's in the Magna Carta, says that no person will be basically, I don't remember the exact wording, but basically nobody will be fined or dispossessed of their property except by their peers, meaning not by the king or any of his officers. So it goes all the way back to the Magna Carta. And it's basically to protect you from a crazy sovereign. If crazy sovereign has a crazy law, you need to make sure you can protect yourself with a jury to be like, no, your law is fucking crazy. And that's stupid. Not guilty. It's done. No, not guilty. But we're not at that point yet. So we're going to get to that when we start talking about the cases. Now this is funny because this is how the press wants to paint this, right? It's hilarious. Like it's some new thing. Senator Mike, yes, it's Mike Lee, whatever the fuck his name is. Senator Mike Lee suggests letters of marque and reprisal against illegals and drug cartel members, effectively legalizing piracy against them. Bitch, it's in the Constitution. What do you mean legalizing it? It's in the founding document. You can do it, like legalizing piracy. But it's already legal. It's already lawful, actually. Because legal is statutory, and that gets misused quite a bit. So. Let's see. Okay, so yeah, Winbay Bear says Blackwater is now called Academy since 2009. I knew they changed their name. Okay, so we got Kundalini King says DynCorp is another one, Evergreen too. And look, all these guys are definitely going to jump on the smorgasbord over here. Jerry Sonamix says these operators and operations lead back to, oh, you just said it. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Kundalini King says problem with fentanyl dealers, traffickers, and money laundering cartels. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why the government goes after them, because they hate competition, obviously. I actually had a guy back when I was in construction. I used to take back like scrap aluminum and stuff from remodeling outside of the house. And the guy that ran the scrapyard was real cool. He was like, oh man, don't worry about it. I don't need your ID or nothing. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, dude, I hate the government. He said the only reason government prosecutes thieves is because they hate competition. I was like, that's pretty fucking funny, dude. But also you should probably not allow thieves to come. That's just because see, that's the thing too. And we're going to get to that. It's probably going to be the last story about exile. Common law punishment for thievery is death, right? So that's actually one of the ways they were able to sell a lot of the jurists on switching everything over to equities, because it's considered more merciful. See, common law is full liability, right? Full liability. That's where the term "you caught a thief red-handed" comes from. It's because he's covering his belly wound that you just gave him when you caught him with his hand. And then when he puts his hand up for you to not do it again, it's red-handed. And so then you're completely justified at common law to do that. And then if, say, like you're a cattle thief or something, they just hang you, right? And see, I'll take freedom and full liability at common law over the equity and its ability for the judge in his private conscience to grant you a little bit of mercy and then fleece you by generating securities. You know, if I'm a thief, then yeah, I know when I go out and steal, I know I'm probably going to be hung if I get caught, right? And everybody goes into it with that full understanding. So if you're dumb enough to not work for your own shit and you get, you know, and that's it, right? Which brings us to our next story. Mike is a new member of the Jurist Society, man. Awesome. We will be holding the first class Friday night. So I don't care if there's 4 people, 40, it doesn't matter because it's going to be nice. We can focus on, in fact, the smaller it is, initially, I'll be able to bring everybody up on the panel and we can just discuss all these things. And I'm very excited about it because it's going to be nice to have people be able to, once people get to the level of knowing everything that's going on, we're going to have so much more rich discussions when we have shows like this where we're talking about stuff that's going on today. It's going to be fantastic. And also we're going to be able to eventually assemble grand juries and kick the fucking teeth out of whoever we want. So it's pretty exciting stuff. Oh, there's Mike. I thought I clicked on it. It's already highlighted on my end. So anyway, that brings us to our next story though about the whole. So I guess Donald Trump is actually talking about exiling people, which, as I was just saying, is actually more merciful. So actually, I got to stop sharing the screen so you guys can hear it. Because like I said, criminals, violent criminals, people who assault, grape, right? I hate having to use that word on YouTube, but you guys get what I'm saying. Grapes, right? Thieves, you're all just done. That's it. Over with. So now, you know, exiling is actually a bit more merciful. So let's go to the Edge tab here. And while this plays, I'll be right back because the coffee's running through me.
People, they're violent people. I used to say these are more violent than our criminals. In fact, the best part about them is they make our criminals look quite nice, actually, by comparison. They are very violent people. We also have many violent criminals in our country, however, that did not necessarily come here illegally, but have been arrested 30 times, 35 times, 41, 42 times in a couple of cases, 25 times, 18 times, many for murder and other heinous charges such as pushing people into subways. As the train's coming along at 45 miles an hour, boom, you get pushed into the subway. They had it last week, hitting them in the head with baseball bats while they're not looking, punching old ladies in the face, knocking them unconscious and stealing their purse. They even break into apartments and rape elderly women and beat up elderly men, beat them to hell. And I don't want these violent repeat offenders in our country any more than I want illegal aliens from other countries who misbehave. And I say, and this is subject to getting it approved, but if they've been arrested many, many times, they're repeat offenders by many numbers, I want them out of our country. I also will be seeking permission to do so. We're going to get approval, hopefully, to get them the hell out of our country along with others. Let them be brought to a foreign land and maintained by others for a very small fee as opposed to be maintained in our jails for massive amounts of money, including the private prison companies that charge us a fortune. Now, let them be brought out of our country and let them live there for a while. Let's see how they like it. You'll see crime all over the country dry up. Essentially, that's what Venezuela and other countries are doing. They're getting rid of their criminals and putting them into the United States of America. And their crime is down by almost 80%. We're going to restore law and order in America, and we want to bring back the death penalty for these horrible people that kill people.
So I see what you're saying, Kundalini. What he's talking about is obviously deporting the illegals, but he's talking about actually being able to exile, which I'm not sure how that would actually work. He'd have to use admiralty. He'd have to use whatever England used when they started Australia, which is, like I said, none of these laws were just created when we became a nation. We adopted, our nation became a sovereign entity in international maritime admiralty. That's what happened. It's not like we created our own admiralty. I mean, obviously it was expressed how it was going to be dealt with in the United States through statute and now code, but that's, so you'd probably have to use something like that, I would imagine. But with that being said, It's actually in equity, which I want to get out of 100%. That's what we do with by reclaiming our estate, so we personally can be out of it. But it'd be nice if the entire nation went back to being a confederate union, where the sovereignty is with the states and then within the people ultimately. But as far as equity goes, that's why like the penalty for a lot of things at common law is capital punishment, because the concept of a prison is stupid, right? The government has nothing that is its own. It takes everything that it has. So every dollar it spends, it has appropriated from us. And it's supposed to do that through the proper tax system, which is the proper way to fund government: sales tax, excise tax, import and export tax, and certain excise taxes on some activities, but definitely not anything on like feeding yourself or traveling or any of that type of shit, in hunting licenses, driver's licenses, tolls, none of that shit. So, but this is actually a genius way to kind of save some money and basically do what England did with its criminals in the founding of Australia. And he is talking about violent criminals. See, and it's actually more merciful because at common law, those violent criminals would just be hung. And that's the same thing with thieves, would just be hung, because all crime ultimately is theft. That's why that's not played around with at common law. Catch 22. All right, man. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Friday night is when I'm planning on in the first class, and I've got a bunch of material already prepared. So excellent. You said send them to Greenland to freeze their asses off, huh? All right, so let's see. How do I want to get into this morning? We are going to get into this case law. I guess we'll just go to the first case law. This is Chris. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Chrisholm. Yeah, Chisholm v. Georgia. Could be Chisholm, but it's Chisholm. I don't know. It doesn't pronounce it. But anyways, in this is where you get we are sovereigns without subjects. Okay, this is from 17. Shit, what is it from? It's from like 1780 something. Hold on a second. I actually have. This is 1793. So this is back, original republic, Constitution was just ratified, but the states still realize, see, the Articles of Confederation is still in effect, and people do not realize that the Articles, so the Articles of Confederation are what created the states, and then the Constitution created the feudal government or federal government, and that's why all the states are still Confederate. So here during this time in the 1790s, there was still a firm understanding among the people that they were sovereign. And you will see that expressed in all of these cases in the late 1700s, like Penhallow versus Stone's Administrators basically expresses the same sentiment. But here's what this is something I'd like to put on a t-shirt or a hat, right? So it says here, let's see, how high up should we go? Okay, yeah, you should read the whole case, but I would have to read the whole case. This is a gem. I'll actually link it right in the chat right now, so you guys can read this at your leisure. This entire case is a gem, so I'm just going to go through a little bit of it because I don't have a ton of time this morning. But yeah, read the entire case at your leisure. But the point I want to bring is basically saying that a prince is basically not subject to the courts because he's sovereign. So it says besides the prince having all executive powers, the judgment of the courts would in fact be only monetary, not mandatory to him, and a capacity to be advised, right? And is a distinct, okay, so and a capacity to be advised is a distinct thing from a capacity to be sued. So it's basically just advisory to a sovereign as far as like an actual judge in a court, right? So it says the same feudal ideas run all through all their jurisprudence and constantly remind us of the distinction between a prince and the subject, right? No such ideas obtain here. At the Revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people, and they are truly the sovereigns of the country. but they are sovereigns without subjects. That's called peers without a king. Okay. Unless the African slaves among us may be so-called subjects, right? Obviously. And what people don't realize is that they were already working on phasing out slavery. The entire thing was trumped up in the same, no pun intended, in the same way that the whole BLM bullshit and all that was used just recently over the past decade. It's the same playbook they use. But anyway, let me get back to this. So, and have none to govern but themselves. So the people are truly the sovereigns of the country. They are sovereigns without subjects and have none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens and joint tenants in the sovereignty. Okay, that's fantastic. I would love to get just this. If I can click just this part, that the people are sovereigns without, so you could put like the people, ... right here, the people, ... and then put are sovereigns without subjects, and then obviously leave out the parentheses, and have none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens and as joint tenants in sovereignty. That's why you can hold court. You can hold court, and in fact, the judge and the cop and everyone else, they're your servant, and you can sue them for trespassing on your estate, right? Because they have no ability to dictate how you use your private property whatsoever, especially in traffic or anything. The only way that this will not be something you can do is if you actually hurt somebody. So if you go out and kick somebody's ass and it's not self-defense, like you're just assaulting them, you're robbing them, or you commit an actual crime that would be a crime under common law, then you're just fucked. But outside of that, all this administration of your property and all the revenue codes, such as the motor vehicle code and all that shit, that they apply to the use of your property because you're an infant under administration. No, all that shit goes out the window. And how badass would it be to have this on a t-shirt, right? Or like, so, and then you get pulled over and be like, oh, dude, listen, I'm not an infant under administration. I'm one of the people of the state of Michigan, okay? Like, I have no contracts with the state. What do you want? What do you know what I mean? And yeah, thus begins and that's what court is ultimately. The word jurisdiction, well, you know what? Let me read this next thing and then I'll get into jurisdiction. From the differences existing between feudal sovereignties and governments founded on compacts, it necessarily follows that the respective prerogatives must differ, right? So a feudal sovereignty is where all power stems from the king. Okay, that's why the federal government is called the federal government. It's the feudal government, and the people are the king. So it stems down through the states into the feudal government. Okay, that's why it's the grandkid, right? So that's what a feudal sovereignty is basically where everything flows from the top down from the king. See, here it flows from the bottom up because the people are the king. So we're not supposed to be. Right now we're neo-feudal, definitely, with everybody's title split and all property registered, but that's not what we actually are if people just, take my class, what I'm going, and reclaim their estate, stuff like that. And then, we'll get into that. But anyways, what this means is our government's founded on a compact, it's agreement, it's contract. The very first agreement between the people and the state is the Constitution. That's a contract, and it doesn't tell you what you can do. It specifically delineates the power of the state, the portions of your sovereignty that you're vesting into the state, and you still retain it. So in my view, the only valid constitutions, lawful constitutions, are the original first constitution of each state. Okay, so it says that sovereignty is the right to govern. A nation or state sovereign is the person and persons in whom that resides. In Europe, the sovereignty is generally ascribed to the prince. Here, and they say prince because this again is in the 1790s, and king is only a title within the country because they're all princes under the Pope, and the Pope bestows royal authority. Okay, it's called the Holy. It became called the Holy Roman Alliance, and in fact, there's another case I have that's entirely about the Holy Roman Alliance and in the Monroe Doctrine, which was our response to them wanting to destroy our popular sovereignty, which is why the bar came and infiltrated us and took over our government and all that. But that's a story for another time. Here, it rests with the people. So it says in Europe, the sovereignty is generally ascribed to the prince. Here, it rests with the people. There, the sovereign actually administers the government. Remember, there's that term administer because everybody's under administration of the sovereign. Okay. That's how upside down our country is right now. We are the sovereign, but see, the state and the corporate state has usurped our sovereignty and flipped it upside down by putting us in a subclass of 14th Amendment citizen. Now they're using our own sovereignty to administer us under the presumption that we are not the people, that we are just corporate enfranchisements, that we are just infant paupers, right? 14th Amendment foreigners within the corporate state. Anyways, a bunch of queens, a lot of them, right? So anyways, saying in Europe, the sovereignty is generally ascribed to the prince. Here it rests with the people. There, the sovereign actually administers the government. Here, never in a single instance, right? Our governors are the agents of the people and at most stand in the same relation to their sovereign, in which regents in Europe stand to their sovereigns, meaning that the government stands to us in the same way like a baron would stand to the king. That's what the government is to us. This is a superior court case, right? This is stare decisis. This has been decided, laid down in the original republic as one of the very first case laws. Okay, and it's telling you that the government is in relation to you in the same way that somebody under the king is in relation to him, or the prince, rather, because that's what they are, in which regents in Europe stand to their sovereigns. Their princes have personal powers, dignities, and preeminences. Our rulers have none but official, nor do they partake in sovereignty otherwise or in any other capacity than as private citizens. What that means is that when they're in office, they're not sovereign. They only partake in sovereignty as private citizens. That is the only time. When they return back to being one of the people and stop being a public servant, then they are part of the sovereignty again. But until then, they are not part of the sovereignty at all. All right, so it's a fantastic case. I recommend you guys check out. And of course, I didn't share the window. I shared the damn tab. I gotta stop doing that. There we go. Okay, and this is another case. This is Juilliard versus Greenman. Okay, and this is from the 1840s. You'll go to the top. I'll link this one too, of course, in the chat, so you guys can read this. And now this, while reading this case, you'll see how the attorney has started to remove the knowledge of like what we just seen in Grisham versus Georgia from the people, where they're starting to try to move away and be like, oh, well, the people as a general body are the sovereign. No, we're not. Each individual man is sovereign, period. Okay. But be that as it may, there is no such thing as a power of inherent sovereignty in the government of the United States. It is a government of delegated powers, supreme within its prescribed sphere, but powerless outside of it. In this country, sovereignty resides in the people, and Congress can exercise no power which they have not by their Constitution entrusted to it. All else is withheld. Period. Okay, so, and this, I can't stress this enough, is because what the attorney wanted to remove, the knowledge that the attorney wanted to remove from the people, is that you can do whatever you have vested sovereignty in them to do, because even though you vested that sovereignty, you've let them use a portion of it for a specific purpose so that we don't have to do it, you still retain it. And that's why in the Constitution, all the powers that the states vested to the federal government, they also had to specifically prohibit themselves from using, because otherwise, without that prohibition, the states themselves would still be able to exercise the very same powers that the federal government could. Okay, and therefore make the concept of a federal government meaningless, which it should have never existed in that sense in the first place. The Articles of Confederation were impenetrable. You could recall it. First of all, they were just delegates, which is exactly what they are, because they're delegated with authority by the true sovereigns to go represent on our behalf, right, in the United States in Congress assembled. And they only served for a term of a year, and they could be recalled at any time throughout that year and replaced for any reason. And oh, no, the aristocracy did not want that, right? Oh, yo, shit. It's Owen Sharpie. What's up, buddy? How you doing? So I work with him. It's funny. So, yeah, they wanted these lifetime senators, these fucking ghosts that haunt the halls of fucking Congress, being able to do whatever they want, right? And under the 14th Amendment, you're subject to their arbitrary commercial legislation because you're a commercial entity, right? As a 14th Amendment citizen whose estate has been mortgaged, right? So, all right. So there's a couple court cases. I think I have, yeah, here's the other thing about the court, right? So this is what I meant by this. The jury of your peers protects a sovereign from another crazy sovereign, right? Because sovereignty, right here it says this is American Banana Co. versus United Fruit Co., right? And it says sovereignty means that the decree of the sovereign makes the law. So when the American people are sovereigns without subjects, when you hold court, you literally are, that's what gives you the power to hold court, and you make the law. So when somebody's dealing with you, say like the law of the domicile is a good example. So when somebody comes on your property, when you actually own absolute title to your property, right? When you're free and we're not in this neo-feudal system, but you have absolute title to your property, allodial title, whatever law you declare on your property, because you're the sovereign, you're not in a public shared communal space, but you're the sovereign, whatever law you declare on your property is the law, and it's enforceable, right? So, and so trespassing, say trespassers, we all see from the old farmers from the late 1800s. Damn, babe, did you have to make coffee while I'm streaming? Holy shit. Anyway, wow, sorry about that, guys. That is obnoxiously loud. But anyways, we know the farmers from the 1800s and stuff would have like, hey, trespassers will be shot, right? In early 1900s, before the bankruptcy and everybody became 14th Amendment infants by accepting welfare from the syphilitic cripple named FDR. Trespassers will be shot. There's nothing anybody could do about that. If you trespassed on that land and that farmer shot you, there's nothing anybody could do about it. That was his law. You violated his law. You seen the posted sign. There had to be a posted sign, obviously, but you seen the posted sign and that's it. It's over with. And so, yeah. So we're going to get to, this is the other thing. So when holding court, right, and taking them through the at-law process after they have trespassed upon your estate by attempting to administer it, and you served them with the contract that you're going to put on the record, which is also your declaration of title and claim of your estate, declaration of claim of title to your estate, right? It's actually a much longer title than that, but it's basically several actions rolled into one action in a fluent and cohesive manner. So it's really just one action, but it serves several purposes would be the more accurate way. And you've served them with that, and they continue. You take them through the at-law process, right? And one of the reasons they're not immune from suit, one of the major reasons they're not immune from suit, aside from the fact that they're violating your rights under the color of law, is this right here. This is Planters Bank or U.S. Bank versus Planters Bank. And it says, it is, we think, a sound principle that when a government becomes a partner in any trading company, it divests itself, so far as concerns the transactions of that company, of its sovereign character and takes on that of a private citizen. They have no judicial immunity. They have even the United States as corporation has no immunity. There's no immunity from suit here, right? That's all the government does now is engage in private trade. It's all of these are companies are essentially securities trading companies, right? These courts generate and trade securities, right? Sell to private institutional investors. The United States itself and its population with the Federal Reserve, which is a private bank, and we know it's a private bank. Well, of course, we definitely know it's a private bank, but many But it was even further proven that it's a privately owned bank by the audit in 2012 that Ron Paul tried to do using the Freedom of Information Act, and the Federal Reserve said we're not subject to the Freedom of Information Act because we are a private bank with private investors, or with private stockholders, basically. And so the fact that Congress does business with that, and in fact, everybody, that right there in this court case evidences it. But that right there, and the fact that everybody's dealing in securities all based on the Federal Reserve note and dealing with the Federal Reserve, nothing that calls itself government, which they're not government anyways, they're private corporations, but they're municipal corporations and trading associations and et cetera, but they can't even pretend to have sovereign immunity. So I'll link this one for you guys as well. So let me see what I may have missed. To be fair, when it's time for coffee, it's time for coffee. Yeah, no shit. See, I would drink more coffee, but I got to go to sleep shortly after I'm done chatting with you folks. But the Incarnate Unlimited says, no worries, the information is worth the percolation. Yeah, she was killing me with that. Anyway, she's working. She works from home, so I cut her a break. But anyways, let's move on. So one of the last things I wanted to get to for you guys today was this. So share screen. I actually had to freaking open up, I had to download a PDF viewer. For some reason, my Microsoft Edge wouldn't open up any of my PDFs anymore, and I thought my SD card was corrupted, and I was about to freak out, but fortunately it was not. So this is further evidence, or this is just, it's not even just evidence, because I know this to be a fact. It works. It has already worked. It will work once I teach you how to do it, and you know how to stand on it. And part of standing on it is to be confident in doing it and knowing that you have the sovereign authority to do it. We just read a case that says the people are sovereigns without subjects, and that the government's relationship to the people is the same as a noble. We'll just put it that simply. A noble is to the sovereign authority prince or king or whoever oversees, right? So they are subject to you. They cannot stand to you. They have no authority over you to tell you what to do with your property. That's the biggest thing. That's why everybody's like, oh, we're going to get rid of income tax. Yeah, you should get rid of the whole 14th Amendment, right? And the idea that we're infants under administration and return our private property rights back to, or our rights to property, period, back to us, instead of placing us all under administration through probate and telling us how to use our property and then fining and feeing us for the use of it or for the misuse of it, which is all called revenue code. Okay. You should stop generating securities from the mortgage of our estates, right? You should stop doing all that. That should end. And most importantly, it would all end immediately. You know how you used to record your birth? And I said this last time. You know how you used to record your family tree and everything? Like, all of your records were in your family Bible. And that was accepted at common law. In fact, that was the only way of recording. That's how everybody did it. There was no birth certificate. There was no social security. All of those are legal entity identifiers, and they're attached to account numbers. And none of this would be possible without that stupid fucking thing, which they have no right to do. How can they take your name and do anything with it? That's part of your property. That's your property. That is your most sacred property. That was given to you by your family, your parents, right? Your mother and father, rather. How can they take your name and do anything? Well, they cannot, unless you're an infant under administration, because they have to keep track of their chattel. They have to keep track of their wards, because you're under wardship through probate jurisdiction. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you're new to the channel, if you've already signed up for the membership, you'll learn more about it on Friday night. But also go watch the last couple episodes, or streams that I've done, episodes, like it's a fucking show, streams that I've done. And I go through and explain and show you the probate code and how they use presumption, how they use the Magna Carta and the Set the KV Act, and how it's exactly what they're doing. How in Title I, Section 8 of the United States Code, it says the word person, human being, and individual all mean, in any act of Congress, period, Those words all mean an infant of the species Homo sapien at any who is born alive, a certificate of live birth at any stage of development. Your parents abandon you by documentation, pledge you to the state, and then the state pledges you to the federal government. And the reason they use the ancient system of pledging is because it is the only system of conveyance that does not require mutual consideration. I know that probably sounded like Spanish to a lot of people. Unless you understand Spanish, then it sounded like another language. And what that means is that that is the only system of conveyance, meaning the transfer of property, and your children are your property, that does not require mutual consideration, meaning mutual benefit and detriment, meaning I give you something and receive something. You give me something and receive something. We both lose and we both gain. That is a necessary, fundamental pillar of a contract. Without equal consideration, without mutual consideration, a contract is null and void unless it's pledging. You can pledge something, and it's an ancient law that you can pledge, like how you pledge service to a feudal lord. He doesn't have to give you anything in return, right? That's the only system of conveyance that does not require mutual consideration, and that's what they do. So I put a link in the description of this video, actually, if you're interested. So we'll have at least 4 classes a month, access to my entire hard drive, all of my templates, and of course, I'm gonna teach you how to do this stuff personally in our private classes. And it's just a way to weed out trolls and to weed out people who aren't serious, and to weed out, I hate to say it, but idiots and people who it's like a passing fancy. Like, this seems like, oh, this is interesting. It sounds cool. I've heard about that sovereign citizen thing before, which if you ever use the term sovereign citizen, don't ever say that to me. It's an oxymoron. It makes no sense. Right. So, yeah, no problem. No problem. So what I was going to get to before I went on that huge diatribe is this is Black's Law, fourth edition. And this is the definition of court. And now you gotta, in order to get the most accurate, okay, Dorian. Anyway, in order to get the definition of the most etymologically sound definition, first of all, to get the most etymologically sound definition of any word, you have to go to a law dictionary. But to get the most honest etymologically sound definition that hasn't been, where most of the definition hasn't been omitted by bar attorneys, right, by the Bar Association, you have to go to older dictionaries. And Black's Law 4th edition is one of the best for general international terms. But Bouvier's 1856 is probably the best for American common law terms, right? So like if you're in England or Ireland or wherever, Black's 4th, Black's 2nd, Black's 3rd, those are great because you're going to have that chimera of all those various jurisdictions deeply entrenched in your governments for centuries. Whereas in our government, it's only become a chimera over the last century and a half. And we, like I said, we still, the founding documents and superior court cases, but you can use the things I'm talking about in any country. And I'm going to start covering that in the public classes a lot more of how to apply, say, the Magna Carta in any common law country. Right, because that's that any country that was founded by England and that's under the common law or was at one time under the common law, they can never remove the common law because it is the fundamental jurisdiction, really, of every country. But it just varies when you get over into the East, and their customs and practices were much different. And generally, it's all based on the law of nature. But anyway, so a court is a space which is uncovered, but blah, blah, blah. That's not what we want. We wanted, hey, now it's freezing up on me. Hold on. Here it is, international law. So a court is the person and suite of the sovereign. That's where the term suit comes from. So suite has become suit. That's what lawsuit is, law suite. And so it's the person and the suite of the sovereign, right? The suit of the sovereign. That's why you, as a sovereign, like it just said in Chisholm v. Georgia, right, from the 1790s, that we're sovereigns without subjects and the government's underneath us, you can hold court anywhere. You can hold court in the judge's courtroom because he's not actually a judge, he's a special administrator. And once you file an at-law counterclaim, you actually usurp the authority of his lower court, because your court is what's called a superior court of record, which I'm about to get to. Okay, so the place where the sovereign sojourns with his regal retinue, wherever that may be. Okay, and so that's why in the Magna Carta, they said common pleas will be held at a fixed place, so that they didn't have to chase the king around to hold court. So the court delegated a portion of his sovereign authority to, or basically held it in a fixed place. They forced him to be like, hey, you're going to be here at this time to hear common pleas, and that's that. So practice an organ of the government, but no. So we want to go up here. There's a very expansive definition in there, but there's a couple main points I want to show to you. So classification, here it is. Courts may be classified and divided according to the several methods, the following being more usual: courts of record and courts not of record. So common law courts, in order for something to be a common law court, it must be a court of record. For something to be a court of record, it must proceed according to the course of the common law. So when you ask the court, is this a court of record? They're going to say, well, we keep a record. No, that's not what I asked you. Is this a court of record? Because it is actually a type of court. And in order for it to be a court of record, it has to be a common law court. It has to proceed according to the course of the common law. And it also has to be presided over by a sovereign authority. Right? So the judge is pretending to be the sovereign authority, but he's really just a special administrator. And even if he was a judge, he couldn't be in a court of record because that is run by a magistrate. Well, it's not run by a magistrate. It's facilitated by a magistrate. It's run by a sovereign. And the magistrate has no tribunal powers. An example of a magistrate is a justice of the peace, right? So courts of record, not courts of record. So the former, meaning the court of record, being those whose acts and judicial proceedings are enrolled or recorded for a perpetual memory and testimony, and which have power to fine and imprison for contempt. Error lies to their judgments. So basically, they're the ones who deal with any kind of writ of error from a lower court. And that's what that means. This is being written with the understanding that the person reading it knows what is meant by error. It's the error of a lower court will go to a superior court of record. And they generally possess a seal, which is why I tell you guys that we have to have a seal. You have to establish and publish your house and your house seal, because that's what you're going to put on all of your documents. And especially when you file an at-law counterclaim and you put a seal on there, and it's the seal of a sovereign, it's higher than their court seal because they're a lower court. And they borrow a portion of your sovereignty even to exist in the first place. So courts not of record are those of inferior dignity, which have no power to fine or to imprison, and in which the proceedings are not enrolled or recorded. And that's what all the courts of equity, the traffic, all of its equity pretty much, and probate. Probate is held in the jurisdiction of equity, and it's all the enforcement of contracts, and they're all inferior courts, and none of them keep an actual record. They keep their own record, but they can change it anytime they want. Right? So no, well, yeah, the seal has to be a specific measurement, and I'll bring up, you know what, next time I stream, I will probably stream, I'm going to do the member stream Friday night. What is today? Wednesday? Third shift messing me up. I'm going to do the members only stream Friday night. Next time I stream, I'll bring up an example of the seal. And next time I do the public stream, the morning stream, I'll bring up the example of the seal. And it has to be a specific measurement, which is like 1.5. You know what? Actually, let me see if I can bring it up right now. Hold on a second. I just don't know what I titled it as. Okay. Sure, we'll bring this up on here. Is it going to open? Okay, hold on, guys. It just opened up a whole nother window. I had to get this PDF viewer. Oh, shit. That is definitely not what I thought it was. It's good to know I have that, actually. This is kind of interesting. This is part of the origin of the seal, believe it or not. I'll share this with you guys real quick. Let me get back to actual streaming page. Check this out. This is actually part of the origin of the importance of the seal. A treatise of the institution, right administration, and receiving the sacrament of the Lord's Supper. And it goes back to the rose seal, which is why I try to explain to everybody that common law is what there's, it's common knowledge among people who know the history of law that common law is entirely founded on Judeo-Christianity, essentially. Not the Talmud or any shit like that. That's actually more like the Hammurabi Code type stuff. But anyway, I just want to show you this. I have yet to read the entirety of this. It's a very, very, very old book. That's why it's so slow. It's like all, look at this. There's the roses. 1656. Look at this. While thou grew here, thy fruit made glad, thy hearts that sin and death made fad. Yeah, well, that's pretty difficult to read. So, but anyways, I was looking up the history of the seal, and I came across that, and I have yet to read very much of it because it is difficult to read. Where the hell are the measurements for the seal at? Hold on, guys. Okay, it's got to be about 1.5 inches to 2 inches in diameter. So, but other than that, it's got to be, I mean, technically it could be a stamp. They've really gotten lax with it. But I suggest an embosser, but stamp will also work. The guy who got a $6,800,000 judgment on those 4 court officers just used a stamp. Got a seal that was his house seal. It's his House of Nelson. It's basically a wolf paw, and yeah, but it's got to be 1.5 inches, or I'm sorry, did I say 1 inch? Yeah, 1.5 inches to 2 inches, right? And so like most state seals are 2.5 or 3 inches, but you don't need to do that. So, and generally it can be whatever you want. That's like, as far as the design logo, make it something mean. It literally, it's your house seal. It's your art. It's it. It's what represents your house. Yeah, the house of your last name. Yeah, house of your last name. So he said any specific words on the seal. Yeah, no, they don't talk like that anymore because the attorney took away the knowledge of common law intentionally. We go through that quite often. In fact, I was reading even more into the Michigan Judicature Act, and look at this bullshit. This is where they actually talk about abolishing, which they can never abolish common law. That's why it's narcissistic and egotistical for them to even pretend that they could. You know what I mean? So, oh yeah, I was going to show you guys that in a second too. So when it comes to jurisdiction, I'm not really going to be able to get into jurisdiction this morning because I got to shut this down momentarily. But essentially, jurisdiction means law words, and the jurisdiction. So people think jurisdictions like, oh, it's this county jurisdiction, that county jurisdiction. Those are not jurisdictions. Those are venues. Jurisdictions are types of law. So there is only one thing that's referred to as law constitutionally, right? And that's common law. And I'm going to show that to you in a second. Actually, I'll show it to you right now. We'll go to the Illinois. Where's the Illinois? Bear with me for a second, guys. Here it is. Okay. So like here where it says no judge of any court of law or equity. So it makes a distinction between law and equity. Now everything is equity. Equity is a separate jurisdiction. It's the enforcement of contracts. That's where you have no rights. And that's where the judge does run the court. And that it's also called chancery, right? So chancery and equity are essentially the same thing. In Michigan, it's called chancery. In Illinois, it was called equity, but it's basically the same thing. And the fact that Michigan called it chancery is going to further reinforce what I'm about to show you through the Michigan, because they intended on usurping the sovereignty of the people through probate anyways from the beginning. And I've proven that over and over again. But anyways, it says no judge of any court of law or equity, Secretary of State, Attorney General, attorney for the state, register, clerk of any court of record. See, clerk of any court of record, that would be like the justice of the peace, basically, or whoever the magistrate is, cleric, ministerial individual, right, who has no tribunal. So there's also a difference between a judge and there is no judge in a court of record. That's the whole thing. There is no judge in a common law court of record being run by the people. That's it. Member of either House of Congress or person holding any lucrative office under the United States or this state, blah, 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 right? So that shows you right there the difference in jurisdiction, right? The fact that common law courts are courts of record, okay? And I'm going to pull up a document next time that actually has the list of the requirements for a court of record. It has to have a seal and it has to run according to the course of a common law. It has to have a magistrate separate from the tribunal power, meaning that the magistrate has no authority over to determine law or facts, meaning they can't say they have no decision-making ability whatsoever. That's the point. Now what was the other thing? U.S. Constitution, will go here to Article 3, Section 2 for another example between the two different jurisdictions. And the last thing I'll show you is the thing about Michigan, which I keep showing, but oops, I went too far. So I was busy running my mouth. Article 2, that's the president. Article 3, so the judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity. Now, if we go to like federal rules of civil procedure, oh shit, you guys can't see this, son of a bitch. Window. Here. So, whoops, did you guys see the Illinois thing? Let me know. So I'll show you again as soon as I can find this one. There it is. No. There it is. Yeah, so court of law or equity right here, right? And then the clerk of any court of record, sheriff or collector, blah, blah, blah. Because court of record doesn't have a judge. That's it. And whoever is the magistrate of the court of record has no tribunal authority. And so then I was going to pop over here to the Constitution, and we'll go more on jurisdiction. Definitely going to go into jurisdiction on the members class, but we're going to go next time. I think I'm going to do a whole public class on jurisdiction as well. So this is Article 3, Section 2, the judicial branch. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States and treaties made. So law and equity are separate. And what I wanted to show you, oops, I already opened a new tab, is if we go to federal rules of civil procedure, rule 2, look what they've done. One form of action, the civil action, right? And suits in equity when not sustainable, right? It modifies. And this is part of their taking away entirely any common law jurisdiction. This is basically having all district courts, everything is now run in equity. And that's what probates is anyways. Probate jurisdiction synonymous, or is run in equity. It's not synonymous, but it's run in equity because it's the enforcement of the trust indenture, the presumption, the contracts made on your behalf by the person who's taken power of attorney over you. And so it has to be enforced in equity. You can adjudicate contracts in common law or at common law as well, but they prefer equity to adjudicate contracts because common law only deals with what is and what has been, whereas equity allows them to deal with the future. And it also takes the tribunal authority away from the people and puts it in the office of the judge. which is the Bar Association. And so that allows him to be the god in the courtroom, him to be the king. And that's why they like equity. Now, they also get to deal with pre-crime and like injunctions or DUI or seatbelt. Wear your seatbelt because you might get hurt. And don't drink and drive, which I actually agree with that one. But don't drink and drive because you might kill somebody. So we're going to punish you as if you did hurt somebody or commit a crime. And all that stuff can only happen in equity. And in order to come into the jurisdiction of equity, you have to consent to it via contract. And so what they do is once they've taken power of attorney over you through presumption and placed your will under probate, they basically probate your will and take your entire estate under administration. They then can enter into contracts on your behalf and agreements and force you to say, get a driver's license. That's a contract. Now, when you go in and you're adjudicating a traffic ticket, it's taking place in a court of equity. The judge is a special administrator and he's adjudicating the driver's license contract, or the fact that you didn't have a driver's license. Now he's a special administrator punishing you or attempting to fine and fee you for not using your property in the way that you were told to use. It's not your property, I'm sorry, not using the property of the estate in the manner that you were told to use it, right? Because we go back here, Article 1, Section 8, the words person, human being, child, and individual shall include, which is at the exclusion of everything else in statutory construction. Shall include means only this: every infant member of the species Homo sapiens who is born alive, certificate of live birth, at any stage of development, meaning 2, 20, 50, doesn't matter how old you are, because you're still an infant as a 14th Amendment debt slave, pauper, infant, under administration. They did all this with the Magna Carta. So I'm beating this point to death, but you guys get the idea. You can hold your own court. That's what we are going to be learning, or what I'm going to be teaching you guys how to do and showing you. But the most important thing to do first is to claim your estate. So that way, when you do your actions at law, you actually have teeth, because they've accepted your contract once you've put them on notice just by the very action of continuing to administer the estate. And then you can take them to arbitration. You also take power of attorney over them. And so when you enter into the arbitration proceedings, you can sign all the necessary paperwork on their behalf. And I know this sounds crazy, but it has already fucking worked. It's already worked. $6,800,000 lien on 4 court officers in Colorado right now. And it's removed tens of thousands of dollars of credit card debt and various other accounts like Lowe's. I got a Lowe's thing. This one guy fucking served him with his declaration of claim. That's also simultaneously the contract, and they just zeroed out his account. They didn't even want to fuck with it, because managing your credit, being the middleman between you and the credit, created by the mortgage of your estate, is administering your estate. So anyways, all right. Walking Axel says, Ryan, I have serious blonde on the brain. Will the classes be bouncing from thing to thing? Says to things I'm like a nasty gnat squish. No, we're gonna go into the very first thing that has to be done is the claim of the estate. You know what I mean? But as more people join, obviously we're going to have to go back over some things, and then obviously which it never hurts to go over things more than once, until you really understand what's going on. And once it clicks, you go, oh, and it's like being able to see the world as it really is. It changes your view on everything. From any offer of any kind of benefit whatsoever, you're going to see it for what it actually is. You know what I mean? Because beneficium abstinende, he who accepts the benefit abstains from being the heir. And there is nothing valuable in this country but you. There is no more value that has not already been parceled out except for the human resources and their future sweat equity and the amount of securities that can be generated from them. So everything that's offered to you as a quote unquote benefit is generated by your enslavement, essentially. So Dylan, yeah, no problem, Theo. Thank you. They can't abolish common law, so they attack common sense instead. Yeah, well, it's like right here. We have what I was going to originally show before I get off here. Michigan Judicature Act, where they're talking about getting rid of, so the matter of the abolition of the common law, here, I'll put it at the top where it says 1 right here, because I can't highlight it because of this PDF, must be photocopy or whatever. The matter of the abolition of the common law forms of action has been the subject of a great deal of debate throughout the country for many years. We recommend the abolition of all such forms of action, which they cannot do because you're the one who can hold the court. You can file the action. You can serve them. You can carry out the whole process yourself because they only have the ability to do that from you vesting a portion of your sovereignty to them to do it, and you retain that sovereignty because you've never prohibited yourself from doing it. And so we recommend the abolition of all such forms of actions, except actions of assumpsit, trespass on the case, replevin, ejectment, senatorial, which is what you're going to hit them with anyways, the trespass on the case, because that's the trespass on your estate. The maladministration of your estate falls under trespass on the case. Senatorial, mandamus, and quor warranto, which we will go over all of those in the future, both publicly and in the members class. This is as far as we've deemed it wise to go in this direction. So, and this is from 1914. And then so the proposal is in line with the new Federal Equity Rule 22. See, they want to take everything over to the jurisdiction of equity. The New Jersey Practice Act, the English Judicature Act, fuck England, dude. And not the English people, though, Dorian and friends. Not the UK people, but just definitely fuck your government, 100%. We propose the abolition of the designation register and chancery, and that the county clerk shall be the clerk of the circuit court at law and in chancery. See, that's when they started blending the jurisdictions. Now we're not going to make a distinction between at law. And anytime you see the words at law, that means common law. In fact, law back then and before then only meant common law. Everything else was referred to as what it was: chancery or equity or admiralty or military, right? That they referred to it as what it was. Now they try to tell you everything's law and pretend like what they write over and what Congress enacts is law. It's not law. It's fucking an enactment. It's statutory. And then it gets codified. And that's also not a law. That's just a further expression of the statute or enactment, right? So that the process for appearance in equity cases shall be designated that lawyers shall be designated as attorneys and counselors. Remember what attorney is and what it is to attorn is to transfer feudal homage or service from one feudal lord to another, right? Upon the alienation of an estate. And that's why they don't want you to be a lawyer. See, like we would be lawyers. Students of law we're lawyers, right? They're attorneys, counselors, right? But anyways, and not attorneys and counselors at law and solicitors and counselors in chancery, right? The process for appearance in equity cases shall be designated chancery summons instead of chancery subpoena. Interesting. They changed it to the summons. Well, yeah, it's all the realm of the dead shit anyways. Once you end up under administration and in bankruptcy, you're civilly dead. You're civiliter mortis. You're dead to the law. And that's why they wear the black robes like they're priests, and they're basically Osiris up there governing the dead, because you are dead to the law while you're a 14th Amendment infant pauper. And I've done entire shows on that whole thing. I try to steer clear of the esoteric stuff these days. It kind of turns a lot of people off, but it does go back to that. Yeah, and so they just started blending all these terms in order to take from the public lexicon the knowledge of the distinction between the different jurisdictions. So jurisdiction is, if you go, what jurisdiction is this? If you ask the court, what jurisdiction is this? And he says, oh, this is the jurisdiction of Oakland County Court. No, that's a venue. I said, what form of law, what law words are we using? Because that's what juris, meaning law, like the Jurist Society, which is basically means the law society. That's what I named the membership. Juris means law. Diction, like dictionary, means words. So it's what law words are, what realm of law are we in? Because there really is only common law, and then everything else requires contract or presumption to end up under it, right? Sovereigns, though, are under common law. It's default law because it is the natural law, the law of nature, and nature's God applied to society. So you ask them, what jurisdiction is this? And they say, oh, this is jurisdiction of such and such county. No, that's the venue. What jurisdiction is this? Is this common law? Is this equity? Is this admiralty? Is this a mixture of equity, admiralty? You know, like, but you don't want to ask them all that. You want to be smart the way you ask them. We know how to ask them. If you've been a long time subscriber, you say, I need to know the nature and cause of the charges against me, just like Ryan Michael Thor did. He nailed it. That's exactly. And you know the differences between the jurisdictions as expressed by the Constitution. And the Constitution only provides for two different types of criminal courts. Article 1, Section 8 courts, erected temporarily by Congress, which has turned out to be a long temporary erection, right? And then the Article 3, Section 2 common law courts that deal with law and equity, which is not common law, but they just threw it in there because it's basically the enforcement of contracts, essentially. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll read a few comments and then I'm going to get up out of here. Hold the line. Good to see you. I'm glad you could make it, man. Sorry, I'm just now noticing you. People don't talk like that. Yeah, no, they don't. The house of, that's what we were talking about. Squished my polymer, bee polymer fish. I'm not sure what that means. Oh, you nodded. Squished your polymer. I'm not sure what a polymer fish is, Walking Axel. $5, dude. I would do it anyways for free. Dude, I don't capitulate to the fucking pirates. Are you serious? Nah. Yeah, I will never give a cop my license. Well, actually, my license has been expired for a long time. I don't even fucking deal with it. Like, yeah, why? You have to prove that I'm operating commercially. Or actually, you just have to prove that I'm under administration in the first place. You know, there's 1.5 million ways to deal with cops. But it's funny because people that actually don't know what I'm talking about, they always say that stuff. And that's kind of like, I hate to say it, CJ, but it's kind of like are you cowing to their authority? They work for you. Actually, they shouldn't even, they have no constitutional authority whatsoever. They're policy officers. They're compliance enforcement officers. They're enforcing compliance to the trust indenture to make sure you register your property and pay for permission to use it, because it's not your property. It's property under administration of an estate under administration. When you know how to explain all that stuff, you can pretty much kung fu the shit out of any cop. And then if he wants to be stubborn, then he's just going to lose everything that he owns through arbitration. So it's, like I said, it's already happened. You can write your own power of attorney. Well, yeah, you can take power of attorney over the people that keep administering your estate. Yeah, you can 100%. I'm going to show you how to write the power of attorney. So the lien in Colorado is currently a one-off. What if it was allowed to happen? No, it's not a one-off at all, because there's a million other examples in lower courts. That's just the best success example, right? Like in the traffic courts and stuff, the shit gets traffic cases dismissed all the time. The thing is, they don't keep records and they don't want to deal with it when they're served with the contract, so they just drop it. That's the whole thing. You know what I mean? It's just done, over with, dismissal. I've got plenty of those documents as well. Let's see here. Yeah, you don't have to register or insure, and it's your personal conveyance. And that's the whole thing. Once you register it, you split the title. You give the state superior claim over it, right? And so they can tell you how to use it. That's actually what the word register means. Registration came from William the Conqueror way back in the Doomsday Book. That's when he introduced registration into England. Was he forced all the barons and everybody to register their property in what was called the Doomsday Book. And what that essentially did was gave the superior title to the crown and created the feudal system, which is the right of use of the property that's owned by the crown. That's why earlier when we were going over those court cases and they were talking about the difference between the feudatories of Europe and the way our government's set up, is that the power over there flows, the property rights, basically the authority, the title flows down from the crown. And then people pay a fee, hence feudal fee. The word fee, or you know what I mean, is a feudal term They pay a fee, whether it be a knight's fee or a barony's fee or whatever fee, duke's fee, right, to hold a portion or parcel of the king's land. And during that part of that fee, it comes with a service as well. He's got to maintain the land, pay him a certain portion of whatever's produced on the land, and then in the event that the king goes to war, he has to supply. Well, if you're a knight with a knight's fee, yeah, you're going to fight for your baron and ultimately for the king, and that's how it works. So that the title descended downward amongst the nobility. Right. And then the peasants are the ones that worked, the knight's fee or the baron's fee or whatever. And they were still considered freemen unless they were indentured, but they didn't have title to anything. So they were serfs. And that's where the term serf, peasant, all that. And that's how a feudatory works. So no, never register anything, because when you register something, that's a feudal term. That's how neo-feudalism has taken place in this country, is the registration of our property. So let's see. Yeah, so you claim your children as well when you claim your estate. That's everybody comes under the political protection of your house is what happens. So you establish your house, you establish and publish your house in your seal, you claim your estate. This all goes on the public record with a public record number. You serve all interested parties. And your children, of course, when you do your claim, the claim of your estate, you're going to attach your children to that as well. They come under the protection of your house because they are your property. They're your heirs, right? They're your progeny. They're your posterity. So they're the most sacred of your property. They are your lineage that's going to carry on your house and your estate. All right, let's see what else we got. Just don't stop, he says. Yeah, that's probably not going to work out so well. No, you stop and just show them that they have no authority. That's why I told you guys I think I'm going to make those T-shirts and hats and stuff with various case laws that you can just, and portions of code that works against them, like the motor vehicle definition of motor vehicle in the United States Code, that works against them because it says that it has to be a conveyance used for commercial purposes, right? So if it's not being used for commercial purposes, it's not a motor vehicle. Unless the cop's telling you that you're an enemy of the state. Am I an enemy of the state under the Trading with the Enemy Act? Is that what you're saying? I'm under the territorial jurisdiction of the United States, and I'm a 14th Amendment citizen? Because that's the whole thing. Once you can explain what it is to be one of the people of the state of Michigan, and you have the like I carry a binder. So I have a binder all the time when I drive. You guys can't even see it. It's like blurring in and out and shit. But anyways, this is a binder in my hand with a bunch of everything, just everything that I need. So I don't ever worry about it. And then if he still wants to be stubborn, because there is no silver bullet to deal with a road pirate, they don't hire them for their intelligence, that's for sure. So he's gonna be like, what are you using all them big words for, huh? And he might he's going to issue you something, you know what I mean? Or whatever he does. And then you just take and you smack the judge and the prosecutor upside the head because they do know what the fuck's going on. And they will understand everything that you're saying. They'll pretend like they don't, but they will. And when you hit them with that contract and that at-law counterclaim and you take over their court with your superior court of record, yeah, 9 times out of 10 for a traffic ticket, it's not worth their trouble. The $6,800,000 arbitration was over like a more serious dispute. The guy went to go get his kid from the hospital. His ex was taking his kid to go get the kid a jab of a sort, not the jab, but a jab of a sort. And he didn't want it to happen. So he took his kid out of there, and like one of the hospital workers jumped on his car and he kept going. So that's how that whole case arose. And that judge was not going to let it go without, but like for a stupid little traffic ticket, this is 9 times out of 10, they're going to just fucking, once you serve them, they're going to toss that shit right out. Especially if they can see you know what you're doing and know what you're talking about. That's another thing. Don't ever let them smell any weakness on you. And the only time you'll show weakness is if you don't know what the hell you're doing. Once you understand how this is really how it works, and that you really do have this authority, and this is what our country is founded upon. That's why it's the only country like it in the history of the world, well, that we're told of. and why the monarchies and the Pope want to take it down so badly, as evidenced in the Treaty of Verona, where they got together and said, yeah, popular sovereignty is a real danger to our feudal institutions. So we need to destroy it. We need to stamp it out wherever it arises here in Europe, and we need to destroy it where it already exists. And that was so serious that James Monroe issued the Monroe Doctrine and basically told the monarchies of Europe and the Pope that if you even attempt to colonize on this side of the world anywhere, we're going to take that as an act of war. That's actually, look it up. That's exactly the history. And that's why, because the people are the king here. We are each kings. We're sovereigns without subjects. One more time, we'll just take a look at it before I get off here. Boom. Right? The people, it says, at the revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people. They are truly the sovereigns of the country, but they are sovereigns without subjects and have none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens and as joint tenants in sovereignty. That doesn't mean we're only sovereign as one body, like these democracy worshiping people who think we're a democracy. Oh yeah, we're all together sovereign, not individually. No, this says as joint tenants in sovereignty, meaning we're each individually sovereign together without any subjects. And now it goes on to say that from the differences existing between feudal sovereignties, which I just explained a feudatory to you guys, how that works, where the title descends from the sovereign down, from the king down, and everybody pays a fee and owes a service to use a portion of it, and the title split, and the king retains the absolute title, and the person who pays the fee only gains the right to use it and has to use it the way that the king says. Doesn't that sound familiar? That's almost exactly like what they set up here. Under this neo-feudalist bar association piracy run fucking shithole that it's become. But that's not how it's supposed to be, as evidenced here. It says governments founded on compacts, which are contracts, right? Which is what created the government in the first place, where we delegated a portion of our sovereign authority because the people come before the government, right? There would be no government. The people did not come first, right? And it only borrows a portion of our sovereignty. It says that the respective prerogatives must differ. Sovereignty is the right to govern. A nation or state sovereign is the person or persons in whom that resides, right? In Europe, the sovereignty is generally ascribed to the prince. Here, it rests with the people. There, the sovereign actually there's that trust term, right? Administers the government. Here, never in a single instance. Our governors are the agents of the people and at most stand in the same relation to their sovereign, meaning the people, in which regions in Europe stand to their sovereigns, meaning like your barons and your dukes. And, so the government has the same relationship to us individually, not just collectively, but individually, because we're joint tenants in sovereignty. They have the same relationship to us as those under the king have to the king, or as he's called internationally, the prince, because the Pope is above it. Their princes have personal powers, dignities, and preeminences. Our rulers have none but official, right? So, meaning they only have the powers of the office, which we have vested into that office for them to use. And then it says, nor do they partake in the sovereignty otherwise or in any other capacity than as private citizens. So in their office, they only do what we tell them to do. And outside of what we tell them to do, or have given them authority, expressly granted them authority, not that they've taken by presumption or anything else, but what we've expressly granted them authority to do, outside of that, they're not sovereign except as private citizens, which again shows you that the one of the people are sovereign. That's it. Okay? So hopefully everybody. And so Dehe says, basically your estate is abandoned and you can control it but not own it. And you don't need to be the owner, just the controller of the estate via the certificate of life. No, you can own it. You claim it as the heir, and then you appoint yourself executor. And then nobody else can ever control it again. And you own it. That's the point. Only got caught once because they put up a whole road. You're serious? You fucking run from the cops, huh? I don't recommend that, but it is hilarious. I am the law. Respect the badge. I see Cartman. That's hilarious. Sarah G in the house. Good to see you. If I haven't said hi to you, Jay Heighton. Good to see you. Austin Murphy. Good to see you. I know I didn't say hi to you guys yet. I'll tell you what, on the class, we'll show a lot of the successes that have already happened, both in the next public and private stream. You guys just let me know what you want to see more of on the public side, and I do have like a lesson plan situation for the members class though, so that we can actually get on track and start rolling from step 1 forward. So says let me know when you do. I'll try some. Not sure. It must be something somebody else said. Nope. Oh yeah, you guys start talking about cars. All right, guys. Well, I went way back apparently in the comments. Let me go. Internal monarchy. That'd be nice. Then we could have actual perfect anarchy, but unfortunately, that's not reality. I give up every word I type. It's mangled. That's true. Free energy will not exist until every person understands the law. So the last thing I'll leave you guys with is this. Everybody knows how James Madison was asked, what type of government is it that we've been given? And he said a republic if you can keep it. But a lesser known version of that story, and I tend to believe this actually happened because it makes 100% sense, is George Washington was standing nearby and said, in order to keep it, every man must know the law. And that's 100% true, because the only way that they've been able to take this whole thing over is by removing the knowledge of the law from the public lexicon, from the people, from the zeitgeist, and then secreting it away and occulting it. And now to get a book on Michigan forms and motions, if I even wanted to use their stupid courts of equity, which I never, ever fucking would, because it's a rigged game and the House always wins if you use the courts of equity, because the judge is the tribunal and it's stupid. Like, that's the only place you can have a bench trial. You know what a bench trial is? A fucking bench trial is the judge listens to you and then determines whether or not he or she thinks you're guilty. And talk about a fucking setup. Who pays the judge? Who pays the cop? Who pays the state? The corporate state. So of course he's going to fucking find you guys dumb, right? But to get a book on the public forms and motions and stuff, it's like $1,500 fucking dollars. $1,500, and that's how they occult it away. They pay attorneys ungodly amounts of money. Attorneys make ungodly amounts of money so they can afford them fucking books. But that's the whole thing. They've occulted the whole system, and they made it extraordinarily complex and complicated, where the forms and the motions have to be exact typing and spacing and in this specific format. Otherwise they won't. Dude, don't fuck with any of it. Just take them back to common law by removing their ability to drag you into a court of equity, because in order to come into a court of equity, you have to have a contract, right? And in order for you to be administered and to come under the jurisdiction of probate, they have to have presumptions of infancy, lunacy, idiocy, non-compos mentis, which means mentally incompetent. And all of these in the last stream I showed you guys are right in Michigan's probate code, going from 1827, right? 1827, all the way to now, but most specifically expressed in 1939, where they made the probate code and actually listed how they're going to take your estate and how they can presume you missing after 7 years and all of this shit. So just watch that show. If you're new to this show, watch the last, I think it was the 27th episode from January 27th. But anyways, thank you guys for joining me. I always appreciate you guys. I always enjoy being able to teach you guys some stuff and show you guys various things. I do think it will be cool. It'll definitely be a step in the right direction if Trump abolishes the fucking ungodly IRS and income tax, which it should have never existed. It's a step in the right direction. But ultimately, As I've said many times, only we are going to fix this. And the only way we fix this, if you don't like how the money's spent, you don't like how the administration is run, then remove your estate from administration and reclaim your sovereignty. With that, you guys have a fantastic day. I'm going to take my ass to bed, and let me know what you guys thought of the show and the new song that I played in the beginning in the comments. And also leave any questions, concerns, or anything that you want me to cover on the next show in the comments. And I will see you guys next time. All right.